what did I just see? Jump scare.
And so you're like, oh, okay, well, I know where this is going.
Tense and uncomfortable and crazy, incredible scenes, and you're just like, what the fuck? What's going on? Kind of creepy, man.
Yeah.
When please, you have to burn this book. Poof, and goes up in where there's more horror to be found.
It's just a bunch of craziness, and which is just those. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth. Stories, and jumps out the window.
It just.
Hey everyone, we saw Hereditary this weekend, and I have one quick reaction to give. Wow. What a crazy, good, but frustrating movie.
Challenging.
Challenging is the word I'm looking for.
It's challenging. Yeah, that's just one of those rare movies that comes out and I walk out of the theater just going like, well, I got to go see this immediately.
Again.
Not that I didn't absorb it, but it's so layered and deep and bizarre and also kind of slow and very, slow burn. Takes its time and develops the characters and, and then in the end, it just goes crazy and you're like, where did this kind of come from? You're a little bit, like gobsmacked. You're a little bit confused by it. What happened? What did I just see? And I think I liked it on the way out the first time, and then I did go see it a second time, and I liked it even more. And I enjoyed the viewing the second time better because I was, I knew what to expect, so I wasn't thrown off by scenes that take a little longer than normal.
You weren't challenged as much because you knew what was coming.
Challenged. But yeah, I mean, I know you have a lot of problems. I actually have quite a few problems too. But
it's interesting. I say problems, but this is a movie where problem I don't think is the right descriptor. It's things happen in the movie, and it's not necessarily entertaining always, most of the time, and especially the end is. Okay, I think I nailed down what might be described as a problem. The ending to me just feels rushed. Would you agree? I mean, you saw it twice too. I think there's a lot going on in this movie, even though it's very slow. But in the very end, they then try to say, oh, and here's all the mythology for everything that's been happening, and cram it down your throat in a few minutes, and then the movie ends.
The movie goes from being one type of movie, and then it goes in a total other direction. And yes, it's kind of sprinkled with hints and clues of what's happening all throughout if you pay attention, but it's not overt. It doesn't beat you over the head with it, and it doesn't really even feed you it to where you're like ready for what's coming at the end. I think that's what really throws people off. This is one of those movies that people will walk out of just pissed off because they were not given something that they expected. I don't know. That's maybe not the way to put it, but it's so turns you on your head, and things come out of nowhere. You're right. I mean, at the end, you're kind of going, "Wow, what did I just see? How did that happen?" And
how do they come to those conclusions to be able to say, okay, we come to these conclusions, do you accept it? And put it out into the world for us to accept it.
They don't even care.
They don't care. I mean, that's
like, this is what it is. This is, it's like, here's this painting, and you may hate it. You may think it's terrible, but it's and you could say that about any movie, right? That it is art, obviously, so it's subjective, but this movie it's art house horror, and you just really don't see much of that where you're expected to, especially modern horror movies, Winchester and Blair Witch and whatever else just gets puked out on the screens for kids to go and goof off. This isn't that kind of movie. This is more on the lines of, An Exorcist or Rosemary's Baby. I know it's being compared a lot to those movies, but it's kind of true. It is not your typical like hack and slash horror movie, or even like Insidious, where it'll open with a horror scene, right? Most movies, there's a formula. There's a horror scene.
Right.
Something really bad happens, and then we cut to normal life.
Character development.
Character development. This just like goes into this world, and Toni Collette's mother has just died, and they're going to the funeral, and we go from there, and we're in this normal, well, not normal family, but we're in this family's life.
Is any family really
for
normal?
A while, and you're kind of like going, what's going on? We're getting little dribs and drabs of things, but we're not getting that jump scare. Or
it doesn't feel like a horror movie for the first half of the movie.
And it could have. I'm not saying it would have ruined the movie if they had kind of front loaded it a little better with more like hints and some scares. It could have worked, but I think there's a perfect example of it, and I won't spoil anything, but there's a scene where someone is driving down the road, they get distracted, they look back forward. It's your cliche horror movie moment where driving fast, distracted, looks back, and something is in the road. And in your typical cliched horror movie, that's like some woman in white, or something horror. And in this movie, it's not. It's just something mundane.
Yeah.
And it leads to something else that's
not mundane,
disturbing and horrible that it's almost. I can't think of another horror movie or movie that I've seen these things in. So
well, this movie rates up there. So what I loved about this movie is that, like very few filmmakers out there, it showed you something you've never seen before. And in this case, it showed you some...
Hopefully you've never seen it.
Hopefully. I mean, if you have, I'm sorry, especially if it's in real life. But it showed you some things that you hadn't seen before. But not just sort of the physicality of like scenes that are grotesque or crazy, but it also showed you the emotional states of people because of other events in the movie and how they're affected. And you've just never seen this happen to people, or how people respond in this way to these things. And in that, you're just mesmerized by this movie when you're watching it.
It's a good word. I think it's a little bit hypnotic.
Hypnotic.
Like, I've seen it twice, and I've told you already, both times I found myself kind of dazed and maybe drowsing a little bit because of the pace and because of, just how the movie moves along. I don't even know how to describe it. And maybe it's just because it's slow.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like it. It feels like, there's something always happening, at least a little bit of something always happening that you can pick out as you go along, and that's giving you clues about the characters and how they're interacting with each other, how they interacted with the grandmother, which is a very key part of the movie, is Toni Collette's mother, who is the grandmother of her kids, who has just died. And she was a really strange person. We won't get too far into that.
We should get into spoilers. So basically, as you said, the movie opens up. The grandmother has passed already off screen before the movie starts, and Toni Collette is there.
Did you like that?
Sure. The opening shot is the room and a very slow pan to a dollhouse, or like a little miniature house.
Yeah, that's another big part of the
Then the camera pushes into one of the rooms in this little miniature dollhouse, model house that Toni Collette's character makes for a living and sells, I guess, for shows and museums and whatnot. And as we push into one of the rooms, that room is then the room of the son, and then the son wakes up and the dad comes in, and then the family starts interacting. And then as the movie goes along, we learn things about, there's a younger daughter. She's probably 12,
13.
13, yeah. Okay. And the son's probably about 16, 17, somewhere around there.
High school age.
Driving
yeah.
age, right? Yeah. And then there's Gabriel Byrne and Toni Collette. And those are the 4 main characters, the family. The younger daughter has a nut allergy. And the mother, knowing the younger daughter is basically sort of socially inept. There's something weird about her, where she
seems a little on the spectrum.
Yeah, she's on the autistic spectrum,
or something.
where we're not quite sure. They don't really mention exactly what her issue is, but she's on the spectrum somewhere, where she just seems uncomfortable around other people or whatever, and has her own strange things that she's into. But basically, Toni Collette, the son wants to go to a party where a bunch of teenagers are. They want to do drugs and hang out and all this stuff. And so the mother says, well, you're not going to drink and all this stuff. And so to make him responsible, has to drag the daughter along. So you take your sister, right? Mm-hmm. He takes the sister, get to the party. Of course, somebody's mixing up nuts in the opening scene when they walk in, or chopping up nuts.
Right.
And so you're like, oh, okay, well, I know where this is going, which is, being able to foreshadow yourself and predict is fine, especially when other things happen immediately following that you totally weren't expecting.
Well, yeah, it's just part of the mundane
world that we're in.
The setup of the daughter has this nut allergy, and they're very specific about it early on, where they're at the funeral and she starts eating a chocolate bar. Yeah. And the father comes up and says, that doesn't have nuts, does it? And then the mother looks over and says, does it have nuts?
Yep.
We don't have her EpiPen on us.
Right.
Set up,
yeah. And that's great when a movie does it. They set up, and then you just know.
Strongly set up.
I didn't even think about it at the moment, because when I'm in movies, I just kind of go with the pace. But I love when they set stuff up and then we get paid off later. But at that moment, I didn't think, oh, they're going to be nuts later. When I should have. I mean, that's the obvious.
You didn't?
That's the obvious thing, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, when they opening shot of the party and the girl's chopping a bunch of nuts on the table, I thought, okay, this is going to go bad. Here we go. Now the brother decides that he wants to go smoke some weed in the bedroom with some of his friends. But he wants to send his sister, well, go get a piece of cake. Just ask, they'll give you one. So of course she's there eating cake. It's all over her face. Like no, she doesn't have the social norms that people would wipe off their face, right? There's something going on there, possibly autistic. She starts having a fit, right? She can't breathe, this and that. The brother,
I think it's nicely done too, where there's a slow build to it, where she doesn't immediately go.
No, she doesn't.
Like she starts reacting a little. She goes and gets some water and takes a drink, and you can tell something's wrong. And then we cut to the brother smoking a bong in the bedroom, and she walks in, and we're like, okay, it's fully on.
It's on, and she's having trouble breathing, and eventually he takes her out into the car, and probably one of the most disturbing scenes or sequences of events starts from there. Like, wherever you're at with this movie up until this point, when she starts to suffer from the nut allergy, movie starts kicking in, and if you were falling asleep because of how slow-paced it was up to this point, you're wide awake now, because things are happening. And he's rushing, and he's driving along, and it's foggy out, and, he doesn't have the best visibility. It's dark. They're out in whatever town they're in, they're out in the middle of nowhere, because he's driving on a 2-lane road.
We're supposed to be in Utah or somewhere.
Yeah, with no city lights anywhere. And it'll be okay, I'm going to take you to the hospital, he tells her, as he looks back, as he's driving. And she just cannot breathe because her throat is swelling up. So she rolls down the window, sticks her head out the window to get some more air. And that's when, like you said, he looks back, are you okay? Looks forward, oh, there's something in the road. Yeah. But it's just like a deer or roadkill or something. And he swerves to miss it, and there's a big telephone pole right next to the road. And he drives too close to it to go around the dead carcass.
Yeah, he just swerves wildly.
And the camera cuts to the side of the car where we see the girl, and then we see the girl's head hit the pole. And then we don't know exactly.
Yeah. And he's got it floored, right? He's going 80
He's going very
something.
fast because she would need to get to the hospital quick. So he's going very fast. So we see the contact, we hear the sound effect, and it cuts immediately on the moment that she hits the pole. So we don't exactly know her condition. But you can kind of assume what her condition is at this point. He stops the car immediately, and this is sort of, this moment in the movie is what sort of spurs on all the rest of the movie. Everything else that's going on with the family and the struggles and the conflict and everything is this moment. He stops the car.
So this is the moment where a normal movie would just cut away,
right,
and we're at a funeral.
Yes.
Or maybe we're with the mother and the father and they're crying. The movie does not. It stays with the boy, with the teenager.
So that's the wonderful thing about so many movies. They just don't stop and give you the reaction of what amazing, fun, or horrible moment happens to a character, to just see the character's response to that moment. And we sit on this guy for at least a little bit, and
yeah, maybe a minute. It's not too long, but it's.
And I seem to remember that he does this thing where he wants to turn around to ask her if she's okay, but he can't do it. And then you just see the car drive off.
Well, I'll jump in there. I've seen it twice.
Right.
But his eyes are dead ahead, and for a moment, his eyes drift up to the rearview mirror.
Oh, that's right.
And I don't know if he says anything to her or not, but he looks toward the mirror, and then we see the camera perspective pan up, and then the camera locks back down to looking straight ahead, and he's just sitting there breathing, and then foot comes off the brake, and we see the long shot of the telephone pole in the road, and the car just pulls away. And later in the movie, where he's sitting in the classroom, you can see he's just in the middle of the day in his classroom.
They do a flash. Yeah.
And he looks up, and there's the backside of a mirror.
In the classroom.
And
you see.
Briefly, and if you're really paying attention, you'll see it, and he looks up at it in that scene. But then what happens, he goes home.
Okay, so this is where that scene was done so well, from the party to the roadside incident. Then he goes home and he just parks the car. He gets out. He goes up to his bedroom and lays in bed
And waits.
And I'm not even sure if he slept, but
no, I don't think so.
I don't think I could.
They do a daytime dissolve thing where it's
But what's great is we're just looking at him. But there's a whole story going on in the house, and we only know it from the sound effects, because it's on him.
Dialogue.
We hear the mother and the father somewhere in the house.
Yeah.
She's blah blah blah. I'm gonna go. Bye bye. I talk to you. Whatever. I got this to do. Got that to do. We hear her go out, and then all of a sudden, she starts screaming, because she finds the little.
And we're tight on the kid's face
the
whole
time.
And he's just like in horror the whole time, just like terrified and tortured, right?
Oh, absolutely tortured.
In that moment, the eyes water and just,
His reaction was
so
great.
Good.
Because
he's so good in this movie.
He's traumatized as he's laying there, and he knows his mom's about to walk outside. And then as she does and she starts screaming, he really...
Alex Wolff.
Yeah, Alex Wolff.
He's really good.
He just, a subtle reaction that he's responding to her screaming, and it's terrifying in a way.
Yeah, it's not a jump or anything. It's just
you're just thinking
a tensing up.
This family,
like, now what? What have I done?
Well, when the incident happens on the roadside, you're thinking, oh my God, this poor family, their lives are ruined, right? But him laying there. And hearing the mother go outside and then find the daughter and starting to scream like she was, it just amplified the idea that, this poor family, they have this horrible tragedy to deal with. And not just, the daughter getting killed in the way she did, but that the body was found in the way that it was.
And then we cut to side of the road.
Oh, right.
And there's the head of the little girl.
Yeah.
Bashed in and covered in ants.
Right, because we didn't know that Right, so the mother is screaming and screaming, and we don't know exactly what she found.
No idea.
She could have found the body and the girl's, head and stuff is crushed in the back. But no, her head got popped off by the telephone pole. And that's immediate. So she's screaming. We see the teenage boy's face the whole time. She's screaming. Cut to the road. Mushed face, head of the daughter. And so you realize, oh no, not only did she find her dead daughter in the car, she found her dead headless daughter in the car. And headless turns out later to be sort of a thing.
There's a decapitation theme in this movie. And
so here's where things start.
I don't know, was that planned somehow, or did it just happen?
I think it was probably part of
because
events that.
Yeah, who knows, right?
Right. What influence did the demon world have on things, right?
There's something in the road, and there's a telephone pole, and
and then from here on out is kind of. So then there's some family bickering where the son feels guilty and he accuses the mother. There's a great scene at the dinner table where Mom, you got something to say? Because she's obviously seems bothered by something. And just this great argument between the two of them, mostly on the mother's side because she's just so distraught. You were talking about that scene earlier.
This movie is just tense and uncomfortable. And if you don't...
That seems very uncomfortable.
If you don't enjoy that sort of thing, I mean, it's a sort of entertainment, but it's also, you're tensing up yourself because something's about to explode, right? This is a situation that is, there's a lid on it and the lid is shaking. It's gonna go, and they set this scene where they're having dinner, and it's just very quiet and very tense, and then the conversation starts up between the mother and the son, and it gets worse and worse and worse until the mother is screaming at the son, and everything starts coming out about who's to blame for what happened, and then he throws it back at her. She didn't want to, the daughter Charlie didn't want to go to the party because she's kind of antisocial. She just kind of went because Mom forced her to, and
he throws that back at her.
And another thing they don't mention is where's the EpiPen?
Yeah, we never find the EpiPen.
Why does she not have one?
Why didn't one go to the party with her?
But
if you're going to take her to a party, especially any event that's uncontrolled like that, you definitely want an EpiPen. But of course, they already established that they forget their EpiPen all the time. So,
but that is one of the most amazing scenes, just pure acting scene. I gotta say, Toni Collette is so good in this movie all the way through. She's amazing.
So after this dinner scene, which is one of the most amazing scenes in the movie, especially for Toni Collette, then sort of the movie sort of changes, I would say. Is that the point you would consider it starts changing after this dinner scene? Because then we get the invite to the seance, right?
Well, yeah, that's later in the movie too, but I cannot tell you scene for scene what happens in this movie exactly.
Especially at this point.
It's kind of pieces, and it's islands of crazy, incredible scenes, and then in between there's a little bit of a lull. And this is the start of that. The girl gets killed, the dinner scene, and then it goes on from there. She meets Joan.
Well, because she's telling the husband that she's going to the movies.
There's so much going on. Yeah, she's telling her husband she's going to the movies. She's going to a grief counseling group, which she went to before the daughter died for her mother, right? Her mother had passed away. And there's that scene and the scene at the funeral where she gets up and speaks at her mother's funeral, and a few other little things, but those are like the big ones where you get kind of an exposition dump, but it's so well done that you can kind of forgive it. Toni Collette is so good. She's at this meeting or at the funeral, and she's talking about her mother. The funeral, she says, it's heartening to see so many strange, faces here today, and my mother would be suspicious of you probably.
That's right.
And
All those people were...
The cultists were there at the funeral.
I didn't even put that together in hindsight, because it's so hard to remember everything that was going on. It's such a chaotic movie.
There's a shot where the little girl is watching her mother or her grandmother and people coming up to the body, and some woman like kind of leans over and has some little vial and like rubs it on her lip, and you're just like, what the fuck? What's going on? But it just doesn't register.
Because you don't know who these people are until at the end of the movie.
Later in that scene, she sees this man just looking at her, just kind of smiling and intensely looking at her. And, there's this nice build-up. And then the mother speaks, or Toni Collette speaks about her mother, and you start to kind of get a sense of how strange Grandma was.
Right.
And how
a little bit
secretive, and how she was kind of had a private life and private friends. And
I didn't get it that much from that. I know she mentioned it, but
it might have been in the group, like the circle, where she said that. But I think it was at the funeral. But you start to get little bits of information about the mother and how the mother... there's a scene where she talks to her daughter that's really good too, before the daughter gets killed, where she says, you were Grandma's favorite, right after the funeral. Mm-hmm. And the daughter says she wished I was a boy, or she wanted me to be a boy.
Right.
Which is set up for, what happens later, where basically this cult wants a male host for this demon,
right.
And Charlie has sort of been the surrogate host for it, kind of a temporary host for it, and that's why she's such a mess. She was basically raised by her grandmother, because her mother didn't have the strength to kind of keep fighting her mother and keep her away from her daughter, and which she did with her son. And it's all just dumped out in that scene at the group counseling thing, and you got to kind of pay attention to it, or just kind of put it together later.
It's hard. Yeah, when I got from the main opening scene where Toni Collette was talking at the funeral, was that her mother was a hard ass who treated people poorly, treated her poorly. And that was mainly what I got from that. And then in retrospect, I can see all of the discussion about the mother and her secret life and her secret friends and all the people who were strangely at the funeral, she sort of alludes to. But she seeks counseling, and that's where she meets, what's her name, the actress?
Ann Dowd.
Ann Dowd,
who's playing Joan.
Right. And eventually, Joan, this person she meets, invites her to come to a seance because she claims to be able to talk to a dead son or something that she has.
Yeah, she meets Toni Collette at that grief meeting, that grief counseling thing. And then after the daughter dies, Toni Collette goes back to that and is sitting outside and can't go in.
Right, and she
starts to leave, and Ann Dowd flags her down. So they kind of strike up a friendship, and she goes over and they talk, and she, Ann Dowd, Joan tells her about her son and grandson who drowned, and that's why she was at the grief counseling thing. Whether that happened or not, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you. I was just going to ask you a quick question about that, especially if you've seen it twice. Maybe there's something that you saw that I don't remember, but... So she claims that her son died. We don't know if she even had a son that died. And she's able to make things move on the table, or supposedly the son is moving them on the table.
Yeah, who knows?
And then Toni Collette comes in, and then she's able to get things to move around on the table and do weird stuff too, which surprises her family as well. But I don't think there were any dead people interacting with those objects. I don't think that that the son was doing it or that Toni Collette's daughter was doing it. I think this was all just the demon manipulating them into a place. I mean, that's kind of what I mean, in retrospect, you think at the time they're communicating with the dead, right? But is this really just freaky demon stuff?
It's part of the movie's, it's kind of ambiguous. It doesn't get into explanations. It keeps its mysteries. doesn't give you a whole lot, and it says one thing, but yeah, like is that just the demon? That's after the little girl is killed, and she was, in my estimation anyway, she was the temporary vessel of this demon called Paimon, I think, and it was because of that accident, it was driven out of her body and was able to do these things, write on a chalkboard, "I love you, Grandma," and then do all the stuff at the seance for the mother. Whether that's partially the daughter or not, Charlie, the little girl, or not, I don't know. It doesn't really.
I don't know, and if it was the demon, I don't understand why the demon would even do it. Because what does this lead to that benefited the demon?
It's part of it's part of the corruption of getting the mother to start. There's the mention of these, like, this incantation that Joan mentions first. She says, "I did this incantation that the medium gave me." She has like a Xerox copy of these strange words, and she doesn't know what they are, what language it is. And later on, when Toni Collette does it, we don't hear it. We don't really hear it either. We hear like tiny bits of this incantation.
Right.
But then she goes upstairs to her husband and wakes him up.
Yeah.
"You got to see this. You got to come down, and we're
It's a
going to
pretty
try
intense
something as a
scene.
family." And wakes the son up and takes them down. And she does it, but she has already done this incantation. And that's sort of like, I don't know, allows the demon into their lives.
You have to speculate because it's
not,
very vague.
It's not clear. It's not drawn out for you. But I think you get the gist of it, is that there's this corruption going on with her, and maybe it had been going on her whole life. She seems very, to me, the whole movie, she seemed very kind of unstable, or at least slightly unstable at the beginning, and she gets more and more unhinged, obviously, after things start happening.
One of the things.
But I think her mother had an effect on her. She mentions even
absolutely.
cutting her mother out of her life for a while. And finally, as her mother was getting sick and old, they allowed the mother, Toni Collette's mother, to live there with them.
So was her sleepwalking like part of her weirdness? Was that controlled by the demon? And then during one episode of sleepwalking, she dumped kerosene all over her son and herself and almost lit them on fire. It's just like, it's an interesting scene, but I'm trying to figure out what part of the movie did the sleepwalking play a part in? I don't understand. Is this some kind of manipulation from the demon world or influence from the grandmother?
I mean, I can speculate if you want. I don't know.
I want to know what the movie was trying to.
The movie does not define that for you, but I think
it's just another weird thing going on in the family.
I think that there is, deep down inside, Toni Collette's character is aware that there's something very wrong, and that her son is sort of like the conduit for something that's going to become worse. And in her sleeping mind, in her completely open mind, where she's dreaming and sleeping, she realizes at some point that it's better to kill him, and she goes and douses him with kerosene. And then she wakes up and stops herself. This happened off camera.
That was a great moment when she was explaining that dream to somebody, and she, of course, I put the match out
immediately.
Yeah.
That
was
another
great Toni Collette scene when she's explaining that. A lot of that.
But yeah, does the movie draw it out or explain it fully? No, you're left to sort of figure it out for yourself, which I kind of like. On some level.
I did. Well, so then the movie goes on. She eventually wants to burn a book. Or what was it she wanted to burn?
There's an object for the ceremony or the seance. You need to have an object that the person owned. So she uses the book. The Joan character had this chalkboard that her grandson or whoever could write on for her, and she used this book that the little girl drew in.
All right.
And there's all kinds of art, and usually most of the art is really, really freaky, and a lot of it is just heads. There's the very last picture the little girl drew. We didn't even mention this, but when she cuts the head off the bird hits the window outside her, and she goes out with scissors.
More heads in the movie.
Heads, right? And most of the drawings are just heads.
Yeah.
And then the very last one she drew was that bird's head with a crown on it.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of creepy, man.
Yeah.
When you see it and you realize the whole the symbolism of the crown, especially as it relates to the end.
Well, she tries to burn that book, and she catches fire. So she gets her husband to do it, and then he won't, because he basically thinks that she's gone insane, right?
There's a lot of stuff in between there. But when she finds his mother, or she finds her dead mother's headless body in the attic, she takes Gabriel Byrne
just
up
a minor
to it.
detail. The headless mother is in the
the
attic.
whole half of the movie they're going, God, what's that smell when they get home? Which is kind of like, okay, there's a rotting body, and you're not going to just go, oof, and spray some Lysol. But she takes him up to show him that headless body, and then she's just crazy at this point.
He thinks she dug it up.
So
all those late nights she was out at the movies, he thinks that she was...
He accuses her of, and he obviously thinks she's completely lost it, and she's begging him, please, you have to burn this book. I can't do it. Because she knows, she's already thrown it in the fire, it lights her on fire, so she can't do it.
And she wants him to do it, and she's expecting herself to catch on fire.
She's expecting herself to burn.
But then what happens?
But she can't do it. She's like, I can't do it. I tried. And finally he says, no, I'm going to call the cops. And she grabs it, throws it in the fire, and he catches fire. Poof, and goes up in fire.
He goes, he's...
And this is toward the end of the movie, and obviously things are...
There's a lot of stuff going on.
I mean, we didn't mention the son was beating his head against the table at school. So he's home at this time. And he's sort of unconscious or asleep. He's got a big bandage on. And he wakes up after that.
And he goes down and he finds the dead father burnt up.
The body.
Meanwhile, his mother is climbing on the wall behind him, like a ghost or a spider or something.
There's some really interesting shots in this movie of you just
kind of see something in the corner.
Something either up in the corner
like the
of the
sister
room
earlier in the movie,
or there's some man standing in a dark
they do it
doorway.
With the grandmother, the daughter, shadow in the corner. The grandmother, the daughter. The mother, she's in the background too at the end of the movie, along the wall, on the wall, and then runs across.
Right.
And maybe somebody else. One of the you said a man. Was there a man?
Well, there are cultists who, and this is just my
at the end,
supposition,
all these cultists come out of
there
nowhere.
There are these cultists who have sort of, because the grandmother is dead, she was the leader of the cult. These cultists have kind of come in and are trying to maneuver things. Joan is one of them. And, you see this man naked at some point standing in the doorway, and the son, as the son turns and looks at it, and then his mother drops down from the ceiling and he runs, and that's when she chases him upstairs.
Yeah.
Up into the attic, where there's more horror to be found.
So that reminded me of one of, besides the ending being very weird and sort of disconnected and maybe not being justified, at least what I could tell from one viewing, the mother, Toni Collette's character, sort of is removed from the movie in a substantial way as far as the actor doing stuff. Once she throws the book in the fire and the husband burns. She's that great scene where she's pleading with him, and this great actor moment where she's just letting it all out. And then once she throws the book in, he goes up. Basically, she's out of the movie.
Well, she becomes a monster, basically, in a monster movie.
Right.
And there's some great stuff with that, right? He runs up into the
there's some
attic.
Weird, creepy stuff that's pretty cool, yeah. Then the movie just starts going crazy with stuff, and yeah, I guess if you've seen, you think back to the funeral scene and the setup of the cultists who were there, and then how they're all at the house at the end of the movie, and they're all part of that. And the demon who wants the heads or the headless body, we have the theme of the headless bodies, the headless bird. It's just a bunch of craziness, and then the mother's headless. Then the mother is in front of the son, and she's sawing her own head off, which is just those. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth. The teenage son is watching his mother saw her own head off.
Piano wire, and she's got it wrapped around her neck, and it's going. And he hears it first.
Yeah, he hears it. Goes to investigate the sound,
and he looks up, and she's just floating there.
But to watch
near the ceiling of the attic, just going.
No movie even come close to having.
How insane is that?
A kid watch their mother saw their own head off. Then eventually her head falls off, and then he jumps out the window.
Yeah, there's more. The cultists are there blocking his way out, and he jumps out.
He can't take it anymore. Yeah. Like a Cthulhu's story. Jumps out the window.
He defenestrates himself. Go look that up.
But then, and then it's sort of like the next scenes that I remember are the mother floating across the yard and then up into the tree house.
Well, there's a nice shot where he's laying on the ground, dead or unconscious, and the shadow goes over him, and then he comes around and he just sees the headless body just float up into the tree house. There's one thing I'd like to. I mean, I know we're going on and on here, but I'd like to mention that there's all these little nice moments that are set up and paid off. If you really look for them and think about them, the one that really came to me the other day was that in the very beginning of the movie, the little girl is sleeping in the treehouse.
Right.
The father goes out and finds her, and he's mad. You know how cold it was?
Oh, how cold it was
last night.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the movie, when the brother is walking toward the treehouse, there are all these cultists in the woods, just standing there naked, and just watching him. And the whole time I'm thinking, that was going on.
That must have been going on.
While the little girl was going out to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Who knows what was happening with those cultists going out there and doing things with her. Yeah, it's just chilling when you think about it. And that's good stuff. It's great.
That's one of the things I love about this movie is that there's so much going on, and it seems like it was intelligently woven together with so much detail. Like you're saying, even just the cultist at the funeral at the beginning, I didn't even think back on that. You did.
I didn't really either until seeing it again and understanding.
That's great when a movie can create so much discussion, but then also makes you I want to go see it again so that I could see these details. I want to see how things connect, and maybe it'll make more sense with each repeated viewing, or at least you can appreciate the setup and payoffs that come out, so it's not just a bunch of crazy stuff happening, right? You could go into this and think that just a bunch of crazy stuff's happening.
It's fairly well set up and, crafted to a point. It does not draw things for you. It does not explain things. It leaves a lot of things up to your own imagination and speculation. Like, I don't know what happened. How did this happen or that happen? And it's a little frustrating when you're watching a movie. It can be, and you're just like, well, what happened? And you kind of, I understand like people seeing this movie and not liking it, because you shouldn't have to see a movie twice.
Well, shouldn't have to, but it's the rare really pleasure
but
you can see a movie again and get something more out of it, right?
Some movies are just like that, and it's art.
Well, so in trying to wrap...
Talk about the ending? The very ending?
What was the very ending?
Well, the boy now stands up,
he goes
possessed. There's this weird light effect, too. There's so much going on in this movie. But basically, he jumps out of one of the lands, and he becomes possessed.
Right.
The thing goes into him.
Right. You see it, too. You see it go into him.
It just, and it goes into him. And he gets up, and he walks into the clubhouse, the little treehouse, climbs up into it.
There's a cultist in there.
There's crazy shit going on.
Headless grandmother, headless mother, just the head of the sister.
Headless and bowed down to the idol.
Yeah, and the idol is this little weird statue thing that the girl used to make in
the
her
little
room.
girl had been constructing these idol-like figures throughout
And putting
her
heads, the
parts of
bird's head on
movie.
them.
And her head is on top
Her
of this
mangled head.
weird-looking idol, and naked cultists everywhere, bowing and
Why
scraping.
naked? Just because it's weirder,
It's
right?
weird cultish shit, man.
Not cultists with clothes or robes, right?
Except for,
They're
I
naked.
noticed the second viewing, Anne Dowd had like just a robe type thing on. She just was naked.
She did want to.
Yeah, we don't need you to do that. It's fine. They're already paying her enough. But and just he gets up there and they talk to him briefly and welcome him back to the world as as Paimon
as the demon,
and also as Charlie.
Setting up.
Joan says, "Charlie, it's okay now. Your female body has been corrected, and now you're in the body of a male, and you're in this host, and everything's fine." And they crown him.
Yeah.
And he's just looking, and he's now possessed, and that's the end of the movie. It's sort of like the end of Upgrade, right, where the bad guys win.
Right.
Basically,
the bad guys win.
The possession happens, and
I love it when the bad guys
ends.
win.
Oh, in a horror movie especially.
Oh, a horror movie especially. But other movies that are done well, if the
Yeah.
bad guy can win, it's kind of it's a reflection of the movie, of how dark and drab the movie was in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But so very strange movie. I definitely need to see it again. What grade would you give it at now after your second viewing, after our discussion, and was it different from your first viewing?
I'm still really struggling with the grade.
Maybe we change it later.
I posted on Facebook as a B. I think the first time I saw it, I was somewhere in the B- range because it is frustrating. I saw it the second time, and I posted on Facebook a B, but I don't know if that's even fair. It is so good in so many ways, and there's tiny things, like the couple of things I have wrong. I don't like about it is that the father is underutilized.
Yeah,
and he's
Gabriel
he's kind of a
does not-
non-character, and I really would like to see the grandmother. Like
Yeah.
the beginning of the movie should have another 15 minutes where we're introduced to the grandmother, and we see how she is with Charlie but I don't know if that would even work because it is so explained as the movie goes on. Maybe it would be better to, show, not tell. Minor stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm on the verge of like an A-, I guess.
Oh, wow.
B+, A-, somewhere in there. Go see it, really.
So
if you haven't seen it, you shouldn't be watching this, but
yeah,
some people like that.
But I'm probably going to watch a lot of reviews like this because I want to hear people's thoughts.
Yeah, I have too
I want to hear them
already.
talk about things that I missed, or maybe putting things together, asking questions, maybe like we have. Hopefully you got something out of this that cleared some things up.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's made things worse for you. I don't
Comment below
know. But
and subscribe.
yeah, definitely
And
subscribe. But
We always forget that.
I know. I just want to give them content.
They know what to do.
Yeah. But so my grade, honestly, before this discussion, I think I had a lower grade. But discussing it with you, you pointing out things just in your second viewing that
Because
are.
would you consider going to the theater and seeing it again? At
I
some
think so.
point? Okay, that's a big turn.
Because after I
think
saw
you
the
walked
movie,
out,
you
were like,
I didn't know right away, actually.
I
was like, what the hell?
and I was too. What did I see?
But then you mentioned to me the other day, I'm going to go see it again. And I didn't respond for a while.
Yeah, I noticed.
And I had to think about it. It was like an hour or two later, I said, I don't think I want to see it again.
Well, give it some time.
But
know.
but now after our discussion, I think I do, because I think that there was some crafting there, especially in the foreshadowing bits.
There's a lot of craft in this movie.
It's very well crafted.
Aside from its maybe few shortcomings,
The craft
it is
and the
so
performances.
good. And the performances and the dialogue. There's no false steps in this movie where you're listening to it and you're going, "Ooh, that line of dialogue was kind of goofy." No, it's good. We should wrap this up.
Yeah. Well, so I'll just finish this by saying, I think that I would give it a B+ at this moment.
Okay,
after this discussion. When I think I was only going to give it a B before, And I think it's very possible with a second viewing I may raise this to an A minus.
Yeah, for me it's at least a B plus, but probably I would say it's an A minus.
I've never been so conflicted with the movie
It's
before.
not an easy movie.
Yeah,
It is challenging. It's a difficult movie, and you know, give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
You didn't even mention the. It just.
Which is just those. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth.